So with that, let's get started. I would like to pass it over to Peter Schmidt, Chief Technology Officer with cStor, for a few introductory thoughts. Pete?
Thank you, Kim. So for starters, the educational side of cStor is what we call cStor TechWise, and that's this presentation as well as other webinars come through this interface for the TechWise from cStor. Moving into who is cStor. So cStor, we take I guess a unique approach where we put our clients first, understanding our clients' needs, and then developing solutions with multiple vendors and multiple partners of ours to provide some cost-effective solutions to our end clients. And all these are best-of-breed technologies that we can put forth to our clients. We do look beyond IT. It's our tagline. And from a high level, understanding relationships with our clients and putting those first. But really the reason why we exist is to put people on a path to success. And when we talk about that quite often, we talk about our clients, our employees, and our partners. And those long relationships with all those three really allow us to have an understanding of what success means to everybody, because everybody has a different form of success or where they want to go. And along those lines, we also try to innovate and bring new ideas to our clients to be in the forefront of technology. Some of our offerings, we kind of break it into three groups. The data center offerings, our cybersecurity, and our digital transformation. I will say that we've been doing data center solutions since 2002 from a cStor perspective, so that's nothing new to us. However, we believe that the evolution of IT is amongst everybody, right? It's always evolving. So we saw that coming, and we branched out about 3 years ago into cybersecurity and digital transformation. And we truly believe that digital transformation will be the new data center. It'll be the new norm, but helping everybody evolve into that is really what we're striving to provide at cStor today. Then talking about our services are really our bread and butter from a cStor perspective. All these products we talk about, you could truly buy from anybody. But what makes us unique and different is really our people. From the sales side to the engineering side to the delivery. We have the ability to provide services and best-of-breed services around all the products and types of delivery that are on the screen, but really working with our clients to understand what's the best need from a services perspective, and then being able to deliver that from our services division. And then our best-in-class technologies. This is part of our offering, part of our vendor solutions that we provide, not only services, but offerings around. A large list that's shown here are kind of our premier and our strategic ones. However, what we hope to do is build solutions amongst all of these to provide a working end goal for our clients. So with that being said, we're going to transition into the moving to the cloud portion of our presentation here, where we'll have Rusty Young from NetApp.
All right, so Pete had mentioned digital transformation, and obviously we're seeing tons of customers go through this. It's the way that customers are going to, and businesses in general, are going to differentiate themselves in their market space. And when you think about what digital transformation means, everybody kind of has their own opinion of it, but it's a challenge. It's difficult for businesses to change, and it takes partners like NetApp and cStor to assist you in getting through that. And one of the ways NetApp is doing that is by building what we're calling the data fabric. And if you've been following NetApp, well, we've talked about this for years and years and years. And it's taken years to get this vision complete. If you think about your data in your enterprise, right? Your data, it used to be really simple. It was stored, on this one box in the corner of the data center. Everybody knew where it was, and everybody knew to stay away from it. Don't touch that box. That's where the lifeblood of our business is. But data's not like that anymore. Data is distributed. It's dynamic, and it's constantly changing and coming in from different sources. And on top of that, businesses are starting to adopt more of a hybrid cloud model. So you've got your traditional enterprise IT that's on-prem, and then you got business units or maybe whole directives from the business to try to go out and use the cloud. And the question is, well, how do you do that and how do you make that work? And that's where the NetApp data fabric comes into play, is we're building this framework and making good on this vision to help make it much easier for customers to be able to move between these different modes of IT, whether it be traditional enterprise IT on-prem, maybe you're trying to leverage some public or private cloud, maybe you're trying to take advantage of multiple clouds and get the best cost model you can out of the cloud, or maybe you're on the other side of that where you're trying to truly build a next-gen data center, a data center that's truly automated and kind of follows the rules that you would see in AWS or Amazon, where the end users can just go into a self-service portal and click and get the services that they need. But a lot of times applications move in and out of this. And so as part of this data fabric and cloud discussion, we're going to focus on two topics, two solutions today, Cloud Control and AltiVault, that plug into this data fabric to help your business be able to take advantage of the various ways of storing data out there. So first, we're going to talk about Cloud Control for Office 365. So this service is a service that NetApp has built from the ground up. It requires no NetApp hardware on-prem. It's not a physical box we sell. It's actually a cloud-based service that we've built to fill a gap that we see in the industry. And so I want to start with kind of talking about what Office 365 is. I think everybody knows what it is, but it's always good for just a quick refresh. Right, so Office 365, we know, is really bringing the productivity tools of Microsoft Office to businesses, but through the cloud, without having to have fully installed versions of everything. And so for the scope of this, it includes OneDrive for Business, Skype for Business, SharePoint Online, as well as Exchange. Over time, we may see some new features come into Cloud Control, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But for the scope of this discussion, we're talking about these primary services within Office 365. Now, when you start using SaaS services, and we're focused on Office 365, but this applies to just about any SaaS service that you use. Typically, there is a joint responsibility between the SaaS vendor and the IT team that's consuming the product. On the left-hand side, you have the SaaS vendor building out a redundant piece of infrastructure that can handle hardware failures, application failures, maybe disasters within a region or an area. But on the right-hand side, this shows that there's still the responsibility for the IT teams. And this is a quote directly from Microsoft. You can follow the link and read about what they say about your online data portability. And they're reminding you that this data is yours and that you need to retain rights, title, and interest in the data you store with Office 365. And I don't say this to put fear that Office 365 can't hold data. There are many millions of mailboxes up there, but your business has to take care of its data. So I view this little statement with kind of a little winky eye emoji sitting next to it that says you still need to run it through your business plans and your risk analysis before you can trust anything 100%. And then when you think about putting stuff in SaaS or storing any kind of data anywhere, data loss is still a very common problem. Within the scope of Microsoft Exchange and Office 365, we may kind of laugh because right in the old days, running Exchange or Microsoft Outlook, you had a certain amount of risk just by having these because there was a lot of malware and macros that could get into those environments. But those systems have been hardened and are much more robust, and that's much less of a concern these days. But as you can see on the screen here, data loss is still very common. Maybe it's as simple as a synchronization issue from some third-party app, or maybe your child gets a hold of your phone and is just massively deleting things as they're entertaining themselves while you're out at dinner. And end users are capable of purging their own data as well. I gave an extreme example of an accidental one, but sometimes you just might be deleting things, you clear out your deleted items, and it's not what you meant to delete. And that's a real common way for data to get lost. Obviously, there's ransomware attacks as well. We've seen some pretty big ones in the news. The two that are probably a really big issue and concern, especially in the SaaS offering space, is insider threats and rogue administrators. And insider threats I look at as truly malicious intent, and those have some other challenges you have to get around in your environment to solve. But a rogue administrator might not even be a negative connotation as in it's intentional, but maybe just more somebody isn't certain of what they're doing, they click the wrong box, they change the policy, and you can lose data loss or you can lose data that way. So protecting the data is still an important thing to do in a solution like Office 365. So I want to talk a little bit about the backup options that are in Office 365. We're going to start with Exchange Online. So first, let's talk about how Exchange is configured in the Office 365 space. It follows Microsoft's preferred architecture. If you're into mail systems and Exchange and you're reading up on that, some of those designs will be very familiar to you. So there's 4 copies of the data. It's spread across 2 data centers, but it is a live replication technology. So anything that's happening in one copy is getting immediately pushed to those other copies. There are single item recovery buckets, if you will, in the online Exchange. The first one is a default of 14 days. It can be configured to unlimited, but I'll explain here in a minute how single item recovery built into Exchange is not the same as being able to do a backup. And so then you can hold those recover deleted items for up to 14 days and schedule it up to 30 days. There's also various archive and hold options, but there's not a true backup capability. And I mention no true backup capability because we kind of have to quickly define backup. And I typically define backup as getting your set of data off of the infrastructure that it's on and onto something else. So with that in mind, if you think about if you built a highly available environment on-prem in your data center with 4 copies, truly highly available, would you go to your management and say, we don't need to back it up because I have 4 copies? Usually businesses still have a requirement to back the data to get it on some other media outside of wherever it is it's running today. And so that's how this cloud control product is solving a gap that we see in the Office 365 and other SaaS offering spaces. The last bullet is inactive mailboxes, right? You may have mailboxes that are no longer used, and you might want to take them out of your licensing scheme for Office 365. Without a backup product, there's no way to keep those. So once this flow happens and mail leaves the mailbox, it's gone forever. There's nowhere else to get it from. And so that's why a backup is needed. SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business have a similar setup. Now, these 2 products are essentially the same on the back end. They just have a different wrapper on the front. There are a couple of recycle bins that can cover about 186 days worth that things can be retrieved from. And there is version control. Everyone's pretty familiar with SharePoint having multiple versions of a file. And then there are some preservation policies for e-discovery built into SharePoint. One of the things to know is that SharePoint is backed up by Office 365 on a 12-hour schedule, but it's not the kind of backup where we would traditionally think of as a backup, and it lacks that granular control. When you need that restored, there is no single item recovery. You have to restore an entire site collection back to that 12-hour backup point in time, which means you're going to lose all the data. If it happens at 11 hours and 59 minutes after the last backup, you're going to be rolling back that environment to the previous backup, and that's usually not acceptable to lose that much data. Also, this restore is not self-serviceable, so you have to open a ticket with Microsoft to get this rolled back. So kind of talking about all the different backup options and some of the gaps there are, or the integrated backup options and some of the gaps there are. All right, so enter Cloud Control for Office 365. This gives us the ability to back up and restore mailboxes, site collections, site lists, all within a tool that's going to have policies and control over the backup. So the idea is you have 2 options of how you can back it up. You can back it up into the cloud. So like I said, it's a cloud-based service that's going to go out to Office 365, grab the data, and the default mechanism is to put it into an AWS store. That's the complete managed solution. It's truly a set it and forget it. You procure the licenses, walk through the configuration, and you don't have to worry about it anymore once you configure the backup schedules. There are additional options where it can be stored in, say, Azure, or maybe on an on-prem solution inside a storage grid, which is an object store that NetApp has. different licensing model for these, but it lets you then have control. Maybe you have a very good negotiated rate with Azure or even Amazon, and you say, well, I can handle the storage part myself. You would then manage the keys and all the things associated with that cloud bucket that you're going to back this up into. So it is a flexible tool, but the idea is it's designed to be simple and easy to use. From a user view perspective, this is kind of what it looks like. You've got Office 365 up there at the top, kind of on the left half of the screen. The cloud control service, like I said, is running. We actually run it in Amazon. That's where we have built that service. And so this is the mechanism that goes and performs this backup. We're using native client-side object model CSOM APIs into Office 365. So Microsoft isn't going to try to throttle it. They're not going to think it's some rogue process. It is their proper way of integrating with Office 365 for whatever activities, and we're using it for backup in this case. So from within this view, then when it's time to restore, you walk through the tree just like you would with anything else. You pick your backup time from yesterday, a week ago, a month ago, whatever you have configured, and then you go browse and find the option. We index about 11 items, things like subject and title. Does it have an attachment? So that you can do some searching. You can search for a mailbox, you can search within the mailbox, and go recover the individual items or SharePoint items or OneDrive files that you want back. They can always be restored to where they were. They can be restored to another mailbox, another site, another user. In the case of Exchange, we can also restore them out to PSTs. So kind of depending on your individual business and process flow, maybe you don't store things right back to where the end user had it. Maybe you put in a PST and they get to it from that way. Everything is audited, so all user activity and reporting is kept and stored so that you can see who came in with the administrative account, or if it's delegated to a specific account, who did what process, how long it ran, all that good stuff. So security minded from end to end. From that perspective, everything is encrypted. It's encrypted in flight through TLS 1.2 encryption when it lands in its cloud storage bucket. So whether it be Amazon or Azure or wherever you're putting it, it is stored encrypted at rest there as well. So the data is very safe to modern standards. So just to kind of summarize, NetApp Cloud Control for Office 365 is going to give you a way to retain control of sensitive data, provide flexibility. Oh, we got a little animation problem there. Enable business continuity and simplify administration. Just designed to make a really simple product to fill a gap in the Office 365 space to solve a backup problem. All right, so if you remember in the beginning, I talked about our data fabric and kind of being able to interconnect and have different ways to get data to and from the cloud. And we just talked about one where it's a cloud-to-cloud solution with cloud control to protect that. The second one I'm going to talk about today is AltaVault. And AltaVault is a backup appliance that's cloud integrated. So it allows you to do backup, recovery, and archive directly to the cloud. The AltaVault can be a physical appliance. It can be a virtual appliance. It works with a plethora of cloud providers, a bunch of names that are pretty common, and we'll get to another slide where I show an even bigger list of names and some of lesser heard clouds. But the idea is it's a flexible tool to be able to provide a backup to the cloud. It also integrates very well with just about any backup and recovery tool, and it can even be set and configured to work with a private cloud. One thing that's really important to know about the product is inline compression, dedupe, and encryption and connectivity to the cloud are required to use the product. You can't turn those features off, and you can't use it without without a cloud connection. So I really want you to think of this product as a disk-to-disk solution with a cloud-connected element. One of the things we're seeing when we hear back from customers is that AltaVault is providing them an easy way to securely back up the data to any cloud and save them money. We see a 90% compared to on-prem solution is very common. So when you start balancing out all the tape and disk-to-disk infrastructure you might need on-prem versus a simple appliance that's going to have, and we'll talk about how it's sized and to hold data here in a minute, but versus having just a simple appliance that is cloud connected, or maybe a virtual appliance that is cloud connected to replace that, we can show some pretty substantial cost savings when comparing those two and still be able to meet your backup and recovery SLAs. On screen, I have 5 little boxes up there that represent the virtual options for the AltaVault. So it has a physical appliance option in various sizes, but we can also run an AltaVault in Hyper-V, in KVM, and VMware. So you could simply just use your existing virtualization infrastructure and run an AltaVault appliance without having to buy a physical device. We can also run it in the cloud. So an AltaVault can be run in AWS or in Azure, and you still get all the same features that I've been talking about. So here's a little better view of some of the cloud providers on the right, the backup providers on the left. And one of the unique things this product brings to the market is the ability to back up third-party arrays. So oftentimes people think AltaVault, it's a NetApp product that's designed to back up NetApp systems. And while it backs up NetApp systems just fine, it can also back up third-party arrays. So truly think of this as a disk to cloud backup solution that could be that destination for everything in your environment. It's rare, in my experience, for customers to have a single backup solution. You might be a Semantic Net Backup shop, you might be a Veeam shop, but usually you have other things out there. Maybe some DBAs want to do SQL dumps. Maybe you're doing Oracle RMAN. So real quickly, it's easy to identify that there is more than one backup solution in play. Just like a lot of end users or customers have multiple storage products. So AltaVault brings a way to back all of these up into one place and get everything into the cloud, compressed, deduped, and encrypted to make it safe.
Good.
So AltaVault has 2 primary use cases, or 2 modes that it can run in. The first one is backup and recovery mode. That's the one on the right here. This one is designed specifically to be a true disk to cloud backup solution. This one's designed for organizations who want to include cloud storage as part of the backup infrastructure. And what it does is it maximizes the local cache in the box to keep an amount of data to meet your SLAs on-prem. Yes, the data gets pushed to the cloud immediately, but the box is sized with many terabytes of local cache so that you can say, I need 20 days, 30 days, 15 days of all of my backups on-prem for quick recovery. Everything's still going to the cloud, but you have a specified amount of day local cache, and it's a first in, first out. So it has to be sized appropriately to hold the days you want, and then the older data rolls out at the end. This mode of operation is optimized for meeting backup windows, and the cache capacity can be adjusted by adding and expanding shelves as needed. The other mode that AltaVault can be used in is called cold storage mode. In this case, the local cache is used primarily for metadata. So we're not keeping a local cache of 30 days of backups. We are putting data in here, immediately pushing it to the cloud with inline dedupe, compression, encryption done. And so this is truly, as it's described, is designed for cold storage. So think about this: if you have large sets of data that you really hardly ever access and you need to keep it for a really long time, you could have an AltaVault in cold storage mode, plop the data in here, it'll go out to the cloud. And if you needed it, it's there. Obviously, recovery time out of the cloud is a little bit longer, so your SLAs have to be adjusted accordingly. As I said, only the metadata is kept locally. All data is immediately put into the cloud. And it's optimized for scale of storage. It's not expandable. You don't add shelves to it because all we're keeping is metadata. So I wanted to add one more about how simple the AltaVault is. I talked about, the integration with the backup products and things like that. And you might be thinking, well, how does that work? And it's very simple in the sense that the AltaVault just has a CIFS or NFS share out the left side of it, and it's got cloud connectivity out the right side. So when you think about Veeam, Semantic Net Backup, or you name your backup product, if you can dump data to a CIFS or NFS mount, you can use an AltaVault. So now if you start thinking about maybe those custom scripts or the DBAs that are doing something custom and they're not using the standard tools that your enterprise is using to do backups, this is an easy way to say, all right, guys, run all your scripts, have them dumped to this location, and you can ensure that that data is backed up and participates in your central solution. Same thing applies if you have non-NetApp storage that you're backing up some other way. If you can dump the data to an NFS or CIF share, we can get it on the AltaVault and get it into the cloud. So I really view this as a one, it revolutionizes how backups are done, but it provides you an easy way to start leveraging the cloud for certain things. If you remember that the data fabric picture from the very beginning, right? This is a step to be able to extend your enterprise storage into the cloud, right? We're talking about a transformational change in how your business operates, and this is just one of the many tools out there to help do that. AltaVault can also help with disaster recovery. So remember, I've talked about it being compressed, deduped, and encrypted and pushed into the cloud. So if your primary site is no longer available, you can just go to another site, or if your AltaVault has some catastrophic problem, you just get another AltaVault, spin up a virtual AltaVault, install the keys, because there is an encryption mechanism, so we need those keys, and you can export them from the box so you can save them. And now you can just recover information from your cloud archive to this other site. So the same mechanism can be used for DR. You might not have a DR site, but you know that your data is in the cloud. And if you ever had to do DR, you could spin up a virtualized AltaVault appliance even in the cloud and restore data right out of the cloud into the cloud. So maybe you've backed everything up to AWS, you could spin up a virtual AltaVault and restore everything to Azure Compute VMs and get your business online while you rebuild your infrastructure. Or if you have the DR site, you could spin up a virtual AltaVault or put a physical AltaVault at the DR site, connect to your now cloud based backups and start restoring that data and bring your business online. So a couple of different use cases here. And all you got to do is make sure you have those encryption keys backed up somewhere other than on the AltaVault. So if you're doing any kind of key infrastructure, that's a pretty common thing to have to deal with. Otherwise, it's just something you need to keep in mind when you start down this process. And last but not least, the AltaVault does have detailed reporting. So the AltaVault UI has reports about ingest, capacity, cloud replication. So you can kind of keep track of how much data is moving in and out of the cloud. One of the questions I run across often is people say, well, some of my backup products can do part of these things as well. And they can. There's typically a trade-off, though. Some of the backup products out there are good at getting data to the cloud, but they can't keep the storage efficiencies like inline dedupe and compression in play. Some of the other ones that can do the space savings and efficiencies don't have any reporting or don't have that control mechanism to cache a lot locally. It's just pumping out to the cloud. So the AltaVault kind of brings the best of both worlds, and then it doesn't tie you to a single backup product. Like I said, my experience has been that no matter how big your organization or small it is, you usually end up with more than one backup product because there's always something that just doesn't quite fit the business needs. And that's just the nature of business, and we recognize that. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
We do have a couple of questions for you, Rusty. We'll get going.
All right.
Question, how much storage is included with a license?
Well, it depends. So the way the AltaVault is licensed, and I don't have the whole portfolio of the products of it, but they come in various sizes from a small double-digit terabyte size up into many hundreds of terabytes. So that is something we would want to work with you and cStor with to make sure that we're sizing the AltaVault for your needs. So the idea is you identify how much local cache you need to meet your SLA recovery options. And then we would size the AltaVault, and you'd have the appropriate license for the appropriate amount of terabytes to meet that need.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next question. Do I have to pay ingress and egress charges for the data backed up to the cloud?
That's a great question, and always top of mind for people that are going to the cloud. So yes, when you can cloud connect your AltaVault to whichever cloud provider you want to use, you will have to pay the ingress and egress charges associated with pushing this data into the cloud. And I had mentioned earlier about the 90% savings versus an on-prem solution. So if you think about an on-prem solution that's got tape libraries and tape drives, or maybe a disk to disk with a tape component, and you have to ship those tapes out and pay for the maintenance on those through some kind of provider, that's where we start talking about that 90% savings. So we all know it's usually fairly cheap to get data into the cloud, and there's a little higher cost to get it out. So depending on your individual business's negotiated rates with, say, AWS, or maybe the credits you get from Azure for some of the other Microsoft infrastructure you might have, that's where that cost savings can be seen. And then the other component of that is making sure that the AltaVault is sized appropriately. If all of your restores are always coming out of the cloud, you will see a higher egress charge because you don't have enough local cache.
Great, thank you. That's a great lead into one of our next questions, which is, how is AltaVault sized?
How is it sized? So you think about how to size an AltaVault. You would look at the total amount of data that you're backing up to the AltaVault, right? So it's your entire enterprise, and you're backing up, however many 50s or hundreds of terabytes that might be. And then you would calculate in, all right, you typically do restores that are 2 or 3 weeks old. And you would size the AltaVault based on to hold 3 weeks of backups or 3 weeks of weekly backups, but some dailies. So you would use kind of that basic algorithm of how much capacity your total backup is, how many days of retention you want to make sure is on-prem or on the appliance, and then the appropriate AltaVault would need to be purchased to meet that need. I had mentioned earlier that the AltaVault has 2 modes, the cold storage mode and the backup and recovery mode. So if we're talking in the idea of the backup and recovery mode, even if your business changes or you don't get it right out of the gate, can expand the AltaVault. So if you decided 100 terabytes was the right amount and you had an acquisition, the business grew, right? Great problem to have. You can always add shelves to the AltaVault. If you've maxed out an AltaVault, you just put another one in place, and you would have some backups go to one AltaVault and some go to the other. So we can kind of infinitely scale it and size it based on the needs.
Excellent, thank you. We have time for a couple of more questions, and they are still coming in. Next question, Rusty. Can I back up VMware images to AltaVault and recover those images to a cloud provider with ease?
That's a good one. Let me think about that here. If you were to back up your images with some kind of tool or dump them to an AltaVault, yes, they could participate in that backup to cloud. Now, remember, VMware images are going to be large, so you're going to be putting much larger chunks of data onto the AltaVault. Just needs to be sized accordingly, and then those would go into the cloud. To get those out of the cloud, you would need to go through the AltaVault to make that happen. That restore process happens through the AltaVault. So it's got local data, and then it has metadata of what's stored up there. So if you wanted a VM image that was already in the cloud, it had aged out and was only in the cloud, you would have to pull it back through your AltaVault appliance. But you could do that and then copy it into a cloud, or if you had a virtual AltaVault already in the cloud, you could restore it right into the cloud. And then you'd have to go through the process of converting that VMware image to be cloud ready, if I followed that question right there at the end.
It sounds like you did. Thanks so much. Another question. Is there an option to express route or direct connect in order to save the ingress and egress charges?
So in regards to the express route and direct route for Azure and Amazon, if you had those connections and you had your AltaVault there, yes, you could use that pipe as the connection to the cloud, right? The default mechanism is that you're going out through the internet or over a VPC to get to it. But if you had those more direct connections to the cloud providers, you could certainly use that pipe to get there as well.
Excellent, thank you. There is actually one more question. Does AltaVault require a cloud connection?
Absolutely, and that's an important thing to understand with AltaVault is you cannot use the AltaVault either in virtual form or physical form without a cloud connection. It is designed to not be a disk-to-disk backup solution, but a disk-to-disk to cloud. So part of that setup, it's very simple, but part of that setup is to deploy the appliance or the virtual appliance and then configure it to be connected to the cloud before you can use it.
Excellent, thank you so much. That actually concludes our questions for the day. I do want to thank Rusty Young from NetApp and Peter Schmidt from cStor again for their time and expertise and sharing everything with us. For more information on all cStor events and to register for future events, you can check out our monthly news and events bulletin in your email, or go visit our website or speak with us live at 877-cStor-81. And you can, of course, find us on social media. Thank you again to our guest speakers and for everyone's time today. We hope to see you on or at a future cStor event very soon. Have a great day.